Belief. If, from the very first step on the path of practice, you have listened to the teachings of the Buddha and changed your evil occupations to wholesome ones, you've placed your full belief in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the precepts. Such belief is established in you because you have thoroughly pondered the teachings of the Buddha. For example, he taught, "Do not cause suffering to yourself and others, and you will escape the state of suffering." By applying this teaching to your life, you will see its absolute righteousness, and the result is immediate. When he teaches us to change our evil occupations, we contemplate and find it entirely correct. The evil occupations we currently perform are those that create suffering and kill countless living beings, such as fishing, hunting, and selling alcohol or opium. As wise people, upon hearing these teachings, we can place our complete belief in him. This is a highly practical teaching that brings peace and joy to ourselves, to others, and to all species living on this planet. Because of this practicality, we believe, and no one can ever shake that belief. Why is that? Because his teachings are highly practical and specific, bringing immediate liberation, peace, and happiness to us and all living beings, as mentioned above. If we do not cause suffering to anyone, surely no one will cause suffering to us. If someone else causes us suffering, perhaps they have not heard and understood the teachings of the Buddha. If everyone could hear, understand, and practice exactly according to his teachings, this world would be heaven, an ultimate bliss full of immense happiness for all beings, and suffering would no longer exist. His method of practice is highly practical, bringing specific and immediate liberation. If we simply change our occupation right then and there, living beings escape death and suffering. The strong do not bully the weak, and large animals do not eat small animals.
Seeing beings escape death and suffering, our hearts are filled with joy. Our hands no longer commit evil acts and are no longer stained with blood. Our eyes no longer witness the death and agony of living beings. That is an immense happiness for all species living on this planet. Through careful contemplation and consideration, we clearly see the liberation for ourselves, for others, and for all living beings. If merely changing from an evil occupation to a wholesome one brings such happiness and liberation, then imagine the immense liberation and happiness of a Buddhist monk living with only 3 robes and 1 bowl. Especially when entering concentrations to master the cycle of birth and death and end rebirth. How profound must that belief be? Because there are results, we believe more deeply. At first, we believe in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, but that belief is not yet profound. So, what does it mean to have a profound belief in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the precepts? For belief to be profound, enduring, and steadfast, the result of liberation must be achieved in daily life. The body and mind must attain specific liberation in every practice method. Every practice must yield results, whether large or small. Only then will that belief grow, endure, and last. Initially, you only contemplated the teachings of the Buddha and saw others achieve happiness and peace by changing their occupations. Consequently, you determined to change your evil occupation. First, you see the result of liberation. You no longer witness the struggling, suffering, and death of animals. Your hands no longer shed the blood of living beings. You no longer see drunkards on the streets, stumbling, cursing their wives and children, or shouting at the neighborhood.
You no longer see women selling their bodies to feed themselves, degraded like shameless animals. You no longer see people sitting in stalls, eating the flesh of living beings like ferocious beasts. You no longer see aquatic creatures caught in nets or on hooks, struggling in agony before death. You no longer see wild animals running in terror from hunters. Your heart is filled with joy and delight upon seeing this. It is a scene of liberation for yourself, for others, and for all creatures. What a tremendous happiness for humans and animals on this planet. The peaceful external environment of everyone and everything harmonizes with your serene and peaceful mind, making life even happier. The love for everyone and all living beings becomes deeper and deeper, does it not, my friends? At first, when we change our occupation, we may still face hardships and difficulties. However, after a while, things return to normal, and we no longer have the anxiety and fear we initially felt. Gradually, the new occupation develops further. Thinking back to the times of fishing, being out on the rivers and seas, whenever there were strong winds and heavy storms, life hung by a thread. Family members suffered in agony, worrying and staying awake all night, praying for their loved ones to escape danger and for the seas to calm. The most miserable people are those who engage in occupations that kill living beings. Their families often live in constant anxiety. Illnesses and disasters frequently befall them, yet they remain completely unaware. Coming to Buddhism and strictly living according to his teachings, anyone who carefully reflects will see that favorable conditions come to them much more often than disasters. Looking back at the past, when still engaged in evil occupations, family life was filled with insecurity and disasters. However, because they paid no attention, they continued to suffer and worry, drifting endlessly in the turbulent ups and downs of life. But upon stepping into Buddhism and changing their occupation exactly as the Buddha taught, they immediately found liberation from suffering within those wholesome actions. They did not have to wait 10, 20, or 30 years to see that liberation. Liberation is immediate when we live a wholesome life and perform wholesome deeds, which means not causing suffering to ourselves, to others, and to all living beings. Some people misunderstand the liberation of Buddhism. They think liberation means getting whatever they pray for and having every wish fulfilled. That is not the liberation of Buddhism. That is chasing after desires and becoming further bound by worldly material possessions, which only leads to more and more suffering. Buddhism essentially teaches us to let go to avoid suffering, to abandon cravings to escape the cycle of birth and death. In general, the practices of Buddhism are precisely like that. Clinging creates unwholesome phenomena. Letting go makes wholesome phenomena grow. Living with sufficient food and clothing, without immense wealth or fame, yet possessing a peaceful, contented, and serene mind with few desires. Knowing how to endure, adapt, and be satisfied in all circumstances and with all people. Is that not the liberation of Buddhism? Money, fame, beauty, eating, sleeping, praise, criticism, fear, and worries no longer disturb the mind. Is that not liberation? The liberation of Buddhism aims at an unmoving mind in the face of all circumstances, all objects, all temptations of life, and all the endless painful sensations of the body and mind. It is not about astral projection, spirit channeling, sitting in Zen meditation for days to enjoy illusory bliss, or sitting in deep contemplation of some supernatural world. It is not about magical powers, nor is it about seeing the true nature to become a Buddha. Those are merely illusions, fantasies, and rich imaginations used to delude and deceive followers. Only because there is such true liberation and the ability to train the mind to be unmoving do people believe in Buddhism.
They abandon their entire worldly life as the Buddha taught. Shave off your hair and beard, put on the monk's robe, live without a family, without a home, and live solely with 3 robes and 1 bowl, begging for food.
If there were no such true results, no one would dare follow Buddhism, because the Buddhist life is very arduous, abandoning all the 5 worldly desires. Moreover, the practice requires immense effort and entails many other hardships. For instance, consider the monks currently practicing Eastern Land Zen for 5 or 10 years. Some have practiced for 15 or 20 years and still see no liberation at all. They claim to have seen their true nature, practicing gradually, continually trying to eliminate wandering thoughts, sitting in Zen every day hoping to become a Buddha. But when wandering thoughts cease, they fall into a blank state and experience the illusory states of bliss. It fluctuates, sometimes like this, sometimes like that, sometimes gained, sometimes lost. Yet, when faced with real situations, their minds are still filled with greed, anger, and ignorance. Seeing fame and profit, greed arises. Eating at improper times violates the noble conduct. How can that be called liberation? They start meditating for 30 minutes, gradually increasing to 1 hour, then 10 hours or 12 hours. Yet, wandering thoughts come and go. Sometimes they feel very peaceful, sometimes they feel extremely restless. They cannot move forward, and turning back feels like a waste of effort. In such circumstances and conditions of practice, do these monks feel discouraged? They can only comfort themselves with the words of the patriarchs. Practice takes many lifetimes, or some patriarchs had to practice for 20 or 30 years. These monks harbor hope and console themselves, thinking their practice is not yet profound enough and they must try harder.
Looking back over 10 years, their minds remain the same. Greed, anger, and ignorance are fully present. So they just try to practice more. After 20 years of striving to master life and death with no results, whenever someone provokes them, their greed, anger, and ignorance erupt violently. Afflictions and suffering remain. Why is it that despite endless practice, these afflictions never disappear? They can sit in Zen for 7, 8, or even 11 to 12 hours, but they cannot sit for 1 or 2 full days. Why is that? Because there is no proper method of practice, and the practice is incorrect, so there are no results. Their practice stagnates. But having already committed to the path and having taught others, what can they say or do now? They are senior monks. Speaking the truth would cost them fame and profit. It is too difficult to admit. Caught in a dilemma, they just ignore it and blindly push forward. The junior monks are already in too deep. Returning to secular life would bring mockery, yet their practice leads nowhere. They survive by deceiving Buddhists through preaching, changing from one sutra to another like trading food to make it easier to swallow. They often use vague, abstract arguments, using mysterious and theoretical dharma on the tip of their tongues, recycling the limited meanings of the old patriarchs. They repeat them over and over, adding embellishments to make them seem novel in order to deceive people. That is why some say, "Beware of his deceiving tongue." Those who have knocked on the true door of Buddhism experience immediate liberation. They verify that liberation in a very concrete way. Moreover, upon entering Buddhism, we see that the practice is highly specific. Liberation is clear and without ambiguity, because anyone can easily recognize wholesome and unwholesome phenomena. Having said that, it means only those who have completed the study of the morality of cause and effect
can easily recognize unwholesome and wholesome phenomena. The practice of Buddhism is living. Living in wholesome phenomena is liberation. Living in unwholesome phenomena is suffering. Changing from an evil occupation to a wholesome occupation, if we contemplate it, immediately brings a peaceful and joyful mind, not just for oneself, but for the entire family. Especially for those who know how to have few desires and be content, their peace and happiness multiply immensely. Those who deeply believe in the law of cause and effect, and have learned the humanistic ethics based on it, will experience good fortune very clearly. Even though they do not pray for anything, as they joyfully continue doing wholesome deeds, the law of cause and effect naturally brings good fortune to them, and they always enjoy the full happiness of life. For these people, unwholesome phenomena come to them like water off a duck's back. The ascetic life and the ordinary life. In order to successfully attain the profound and pure belief, you must carefully contemplate and compare the ordinary life and the ascetic life. The ordinary life has its own way, and the ascetic life has its own way. The ascetic life goes in the opposite direction of the ordinary life. The ascetic life means letting go, while the ordinary life means clinging to things. Therefore, do not think the ordinary life and the ascetic life are the same. No, absolutely not. They are not the same at all. Buddhist monks who live a secular life, meaning they have wives and children, chase after fame and wealth, and eat and sleep at improper times, are merely bald-headed lay followers. They are not true ordained bhikkhu disciples of the Buddha. They destroy Buddhism from within, just as parasites living in a lion's fur will eventually kill the lion. If Buddhist monks live like ordinary people, eating and sleeping at improper times, failing to let go of material possessions, their minds easily attached to sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tangibles, and mental objects. The 5 hindrances constantly cloud their wisdom, and the 7 fetters bind them like iron chains, making it impossible to break free. They thus become duratama mara. How then can they live a true holy life, free from desires and unwholesome phenomena? How can they enter the 4 noble concentrations to master birth and death and put an end to rebirth? How can they enter the concentration of anasrava to abandon the mind, destroy the ego, and end suffering? How can they enter the unmoving mind concentration to live a serene, peaceful, and eventless life? If a monk still maintains a secular lifestyle, he cannot possibly practice Buddhism. Such people merely borrow the Buddhist robe to seek a livelihood. Living like that is a despicable existence. They only know how to deceive ignorant devotees to survive on the sweat and tears of others. It is truly contemptible.
Some people misunderstand Buddhism, thinking they only need to know the practice method without actually living the holy life. Such understanding is wrong. Understanding it that way suggests that living and practicing are 2 separate paths. What do reciting the Buddha's name, chanting sutras, bowing in repentance, chanting mantras, or sitting in Zen meditation before the Buddha shrine have to do with actual living? That is a shallow understanding of practice by those whose minds are still deeply attached to material wealth. They do not want to abandon the ordinary life, yet they want to add the ascetic life. In Buddhism, to practice means to live. Living means knowing how to correct mistakes, knowing how to prevent evil deeds, knowing how to stay away from worldly material temptations, and knowing how to be moderate in eating and resting. They have few desires and feel satisfied with basic material conditions, guard their eyes, ears, nose, mouth, body, and mind, and maintain right mindfulness
so their minds remain serene, peaceful, and carefree. Compare the ascetic life of true practitioners with the life of ordinary people to see who suffers and who escapes suffering. After such comparison, we see that human life is truly miserable. The suffering is real. Meanwhile, the life of those leaving home to practice is as free as empty space. Nothing binds them, and nothing can shake their minds. Only after thoroughly understanding both ways of life can we decide to choose one of these two paths. If we hastily choose the path of practice without such comparison and clarity, we might act impulsively. Once we enter the ascetic life, we will find ourselves in a dilemma. The ascetic life is extremely difficult. It is not as easy as people often think. Eventually, their ascetic life is not truly ascetic, and their ordinary life is not truly ordinary. Living is miserable, and dying is miserable too. Look at the lives of others to contemplate your own life.
Family life is full of entanglements, countless emotional bonds, and countless material temptations dragging you toward the path of evil. The worldly path is full of pollution and impurity, with countless thorns and abysses of unwholesome phenomena waiting. The more we contemplate, the more we realize that human beings are born to suffer, and the suffering is real. When we are still young and unmarried, life remains as beautiful as a dream. We just eat and study without worrying, as our parents take care of our meals. When we grow a bit older, we start to desire, spend money, and play, but we do not yet know what suffering is. Thus, we often invite friends to drink alcohol, gamble, fight, or race motorbikes, causing traffic accidents, breaking arms and legs, or sometimes losing our lives. At that moment, we start to see suffering, but that suffering is still very minor. Once we get married, we truly see the suffering of human life. Spouses, children, money, houses, and daily consumption goods. While our parents are alive, if we lack anything, they help us. When they pass away, there is no one to help, and we must manage our own lives. The heavy burden on our shoulders requires us to worry about everything. Yet, spouses and children do not know this, so they are not always sweet to us. Spouses and children have their own thoughts and preferred lifestyles due to their unique characteristics, and so do we. Therefore, living together is not always harmonious. Due to these differences, families often have internal conflicts and disagreements, making the mind dissatisfied and afflicted. There is no joy in it. If we lack endurance, yielding, and acceptance, the family becomes a hell on earth. The more we ponder, the more we see that life is full of suffering. There is no happiness, yet its bond is stronger than anything else. For example, living together, if one person dies, do the survivors suffer? Certainly, everyone feels the sorrow. A husband and wife sit at the dinner table talking about neighbors and end up arguing. Is there any joy in that? Seeing this, what joy is there in life? A couple lives together without money. The wife desires different things, so they argue and resent each other. This shows that life is suffering in all aspects, but worldly people do not know or see this suffering. They only see the superficial illusion and think it is happiness, like a young couple sitting in a shiny car or on a Honda motorbike. This image appears happy, but no one knows the sorrow inside their hearts. A poor person says, "I am poor, I lack food and clothing, I suffer too much." But a rich person says, "I have money, but I suffer even more. I cannot sleep peacefully, fearing thieves." These are all various sorrows and sufferings of life. Living close to one another,
Chickens, ducks, dogs, and pigs cross paths and cause fights, disturbing the whole village. Children play together, and because parents take sides, major conflicts arise. One person goes to jail, another goes to the hospital, and the two families resent each other forever. Those petty matters make human life insecure and dissatisfied. Looking back, the ordained life is as free as empty space. There is no bond, and no circumstance can disturb the mind. The soul is as vast as the sky and earth, embracing everything. They do not feel sad about dirty and impure things, nor do they rejoice over precious things like gold, silver, and gems. Therefore, it is highly difficult for those still living in a family to fully practice the holy life, pure and white like a conch shell, like ordained people. Comparing the worldly life and the transcendent life. The worldly life is a lifelong slavery to material things. The transcendent life completely throws off the yoke of material slavery. Thus, they have no belongings except 3 robes and 1 alms bowl.
At night, they sleep peacefully without fearing thieves or losses because they have nothing to be stolen. They have no house and no family, so they do not worry about a starving wife or a thirsty child. The life of an ordained person is exactly like that. Therefore, the soul is joyful, serene, and completely happy, pure like a conch shell. Nothing can defile it, and unwholesome phenomena cannot disturb the mind. They live alone, walk alone, and act alone, yet they know how to harmonize with everyone's life through the virtues of endurance, yielding, and satisfaction. Comparing the robe of a lay follower with the robe of an ordained monk, we realize that a lay follower practicing Buddhism finds it completely difficult to achieve liberation like an ordained person. They can only resolve their life through wholesome phenomena and cannot master life and death through Zen concentration. When we are fully aware of the ordinary life and the ascetic life, we clearly see that a Buddhist monk cannot live according to worldly, sensual desires or possess material wealth. They must detach and stay far away from everything, letting go of everything. No large temples or stupas, no televisions, refrigerators, cars, motorbikes, or mobile phones. They must live a life of few desires and contentment, with 3 robes and 1 alms bowl, eating 1 meal a day, not eating snacks at improper times. They beg for food to sustain the body, holding no one close or distant, having no money, no fame, and no wealth. If someone asks about the religion, they give forthright answers, never teaching superstitions to deceive people. Therefore, the ordinary life and the ascetic life cannot be the same. If there is any likeness, it is not the ascetic life. Here in the monastery, there are monks, nuns, and also male and female lay followers. However, considering your practice, true practice requires letting go, and you have not completely let go of everything. We know very well that you listen to our teachings for your understanding, but to truly practice to liberate yourselves from the world of sorrow, you lack the resolute will and ability to persevere. A person determined to seek liberation must be dauntless, shave their hair and beard, wear ugly clothes, and cut all emotional fetters with families, parents, brothers, sisters, spouses, children, and relatives. Furthermore, they must abandon all properties, wealth, gold, and silver. With such complete renunciation, you can practice the Zen concentration path of Buddhism. Only by practicing Zen concentration, which means the 4 noble concentrations of dwelling in present bliss, can you master life and death and calm the formations inside the body. This practice is not simple. It requires utmost effort. Monks,
you must think for yourselves. The formations currently active in our bodies, such as the beating heart, liver, lungs, intestines, and nervous system, are working incessantly. The breathing goes in and out automatically, and the skin perspires. All these operations create vitality for our bodies. Yet, by practicing the 4 noble concentrations, we control them and make them stop working. This is not an easy task. If our minds are not yet pure, not yet free from desires and unwholesome phenomena, still loving, hating, holding grudges, craving various things, and not yet severing worldly emotions, then you monks definitely cannot perform this monumental feat. The teachings of the Buddha have clearly outlined the path of practice, taking cause and effect as the core subject for practice. Therefore, changing an evil occupation is the first act to cultivate a wholesome body and mind, which is right action. Next, we gradually practice the virtues of giving and offering to discard selfish and narrow-minded thoughts, staying away from our vast desires.
Every day we cultivate the virtues of endurance, yielding, and satisfaction in every object, every circumstance, and every matter. These specific practices bring you and your family wonderful peace and happiness. A lay follower only needs to practice this much to bring about a peaceful and happy life that most people in this world dream of. Only those who are ignorant and content with their fate find this practice path unsuitable. If it were not for Buddhism to show the path of liberation for humanity, human beings would seek happiness in illusions, which is merely a beautiful dream. Here, we would like to draw your attention to this. The ordinary life and the ascetic life cannot walk the same path. They are 2 distinct directions. The ordinary life is suffering. The ascetic life is liberation. The ordinary life clings to everything. The ascetic life lets go of everything, leaving not a single object. Therefore, by observing, you will clearly know who practices correctly and who practices wrongly. You will know who follows the true Dharma of Buddhism and who practices wrongly, falling into the evil Dharma of heretics. You will no longer mistake them. That is how clearly the ascetic life and the ordinary life are defined.